Hey, Tim, welcome to the Selling Well podcast. It's great to meet you.
Thanks, Mark. I'm really excited to be here and talk about some things to do with sales.
Well, I'm super excited to have you here today because, team, I have recently finished Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little embarrassed to say I've only recently read this book because everybody on the podcast knows how many of these books I read. This one's spectacular, but it was originally written in 2015, published 2016, and it was so enormously popular. We're on the second edition now.
Yes, so the one with the white cover was published in 2016, and this one is just a year old. It's published a year ago.
Got it. And thank you so much, Tim. So critically important topic for all of us today. And I don't know if there's a CEO listening today that isn't going to get a new LinkedIn connection from a financial planner today. And as soon as they accept it, they're going to get pitched financial planning services. And if I allowed email to be open during a podcast, I'm pretty sure it would happen to me during this podcast. So I think there's this massive opportunity to really understand social selling. And Tim, although we've been running our business for 10 years and many years, we've had lots of compliments on our stuff. I learned a ton from this book. There was lots of things we were not doing correctly, but tell me a little bit about your journey of initially writing the book, the need for it, and what have you seen that's been changing over the last 6 or 7 years since the first edition?
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mark, for asking me on, and I really appreciate what you said about the book. I have to admit that a lot of people say it to me. For a number of people, they've come to me and they say that I've changed their life because they have been doing all the old school things like cold calling and sending spam email that don't work anymore, and they know that the buyers have moved on to social media. So in terms of my background, I'm a salesperson. I've been in sales for 25 years. I worked for Oracle, and I've been used to either selling to large enterprises, or when I worked in the Oracle channel, I was generally selling to mid-market organizations, so both big and small companies. And I got involved in social media probably back in 2012, 2013. I was involved in rolling out a very early social selling program in Oracle across about 4,000 people in Europe.
Wow.
And it was that where I basically bumped into the co-author on the first book. And we got a book deal within 3 months. I then wrote it another 3 months in 2015, and it came out in the fall in 2016. And it just took off. It just And in the pre-sale, it was people were falling over themselves to buy it. And then what happened was that during COVID, it took off again. And my publisher came to me and said, "You got to do a second edition because people want to, are interested in it." So what's changed? I think social selling has become the norm. When we started our business we're now in our 8th year. We were seen as niche. People laughed at us. People thought that social media was about taking pictures of your lunch. And now it's become mainstream. And I would say that every single board, if your board isn't discussing it and your board isn't, if you're not being reported at your board level about how much business you're generating through social media, you're way behind.
Well, what an interesting that you start to talk about the board. And that was one of the first things, of course, in the book that jumped out at me, where you get away from any tactics around this initially and just say, listen, an organization needs a social selling strategy for the business, for the organization. And so let's talk about.
So Mark, can I just say,
please,
yeah. This is not a book about tactics. This is not a LinkedIn. This is not about a personal brand. This is about how an organization can generate revenue and get back onto a growth trajectory by using social strategically within the organization. And that's fundamentally different from every single organization who's trying to sell you social selling materials and tactics across the whole of the world. We're the only people in the world who do this.
Well, Tim, that was one of the things that hit me so hard, because being one of these people who would have been, let's call it, couple of inches deep on LinkedIn over the years. We were early into LinkedIn, but in the first 50 pages, you bring up the fact that LinkedIn is only 30% of a social selling strategy. And I'd been so proud telling our team for so many years, we're going to just focus on LinkedIn. And so it really jumped out. But the book's filled with these facts, not just platitudes, but facts. But I'll go back to the strategy side of things. I really enjoyed at the beginning as well, where you would say, okay, you just mentioned the board level.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of mid-size SaaS companies, kind of larger manufacturing businesses, and some very large enterprises. We haven't heard from anybody that they're discussing, the social selling or the digital organization strategy at the board level. We're in some of those board meetings because in some cases we're an outsourced chief revenue officer. So I think this is a really interesting thought. And tell me, there's samples throughout the books, but the ones that are prominent for you, where you've come into an organization that wasn't doing this, and you did get the right buy-in at the right level, the board level. And tell me a little bit about, a case study or two of a program that worked very well when it started at that level.
So usually we usually enter into an organization at CRO level, because the issue that we get is that they've got no pipeline. And the feedback that we're getting right now is nobody's got any pipeline. And the reason for that is that they're still thinking that interruption marketing, so the practices that we had in the 1980s and 1990s they still think is relevant in a digital world, and it's just not. 61% of the world's population are now on social media, and they're active on social media. And everybody who's on social media spends 2 hours, 23 minutes a day on social media. This is where people come to talk. This is where people have conversations. This is where your buyers are. This is where your future employees are. This is where your future investors are. Everybody has moved to social, and COVID basically accelerated that. So we know that through working now for, this is our 8th year, that we can grow people's revenues by 30% and shorten the sales cycle by 20%. We've got salespeople that are getting 10 meetings a week by using social selling. Now, I need to say that when someone sends you a message over social and they basically do a pitch slap, or they basically pitch, that's not social selling, that's spam.
Yeah.
So when you talked earlier on about the CEO basically getting a message saying, I'm a wealth advisor, can I help you? That's spam. So we have a definition of social selling, which comes across in the book, which I'm just going to read out, which is,
please,
using your presence and behavior on social media to build influence, make connections, grow relationships and trust, which lead to conversational and commercial interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the key thing for today is that it doesn't matter how good your salespeople are, and it doesn't matter how much you train them on Medic, they're not getting conversations. And conversations create sales. So it doesn't matter. You can train people to close deals, but if they haven't got any deals in the first place, it's not going to help you. So from a strategic perspective, what we do is that we explain to the CRO about how we can increase revenue, how we can shorten the sales cycles. All of our clients don't have a problem with pipeline. I have this SDR who came to me and complained because he had 25 meetings he'd booked 25 meetings that week. And he said, I don't have enough time for all the meetings I have. Now, when you've got people cold calling and sending spam email, they don't have that complaint. So what we're doing at a strategic level is, once you go into an organization, you show them the power of actually creating influence online. You can actually take what I said, using your presence and behavior on social media to build influence and trust, make connections. You can do that in HR. So what you're doing is that you're immediately able to position yourself as the employer of choice on social media. So you're able to basically suck up and get all the best talent. You can do that in purchasing. You can basically make sure that you've got all the buyers with all the different things that are going on, the polycrisis we have with the supply chain and the differences in supply chain. You can go out and you can get different suppliers at different rates. So what we see suddenly is that this isn't just about selling. This is about an enterprise-wide strategy for the organization. It's about creating visibility for the organization, creating a better environment to work with. And that's a board level issue just as much as pipeline is. I know we're here to talk about sales, but you did ask me about the strategy piece.
I did. And well, those are the 5 measures of a digital organization, I think, that you touch on in the book. And you talk about, number 1, visibility and recognition in the marketplace.
Yep.
Number 2, trust or advisor status for whatever is your core competency. 3, measurable pipeline. So we'll get back to that in a second with a discussion on sales today for sure. As you say with your HR, access to the best talent in the industry. And then finally, we didn't touch on this, but employee engagement. So
Yes.
leveraging social for employee engagement. And we know we've had lots of folks on the show, actually, Tim, where we've been talking about this disastrous situation of employee engagement.
Yep.
Like shocking numbers of people that are either disengaged or actively disengaged,
Yep.
within businesses. But getting back to the positive on the sales side, another quote that I really liked in the book that I think is certainly going to keep most of the listeners today quite interested. Correct me if I have the quote wrong. Every keystroke that a sales team makes can be measured against revenue and EBITDA.
Yes.
So if you are saying if that's the messaging here, I can't imagine there are too many boards or chief revenue officers out there that wouldn't perk up and say, "Listen, I'd love to have a conversation about that." Because
Yeah,
that's
you
what
see, we get a lot of people coming to us saying that social media is just about posting pictures of your lunch and stuff like that, and it's not. Most CEOs who have read the book, the feedback that I've got from them is that this is the first book that shows that there's a connection between active use of social media and revenue.
Yeah.
Because all of the other things, all the other books are about tactics and whether the algorithm does, whether, if you stand on one leg and wear a bandana and then the algorithm does this, this is irrelevant. This is about how your business, and we use the term about walking digital corridors and having digital conversations. As you say, LinkedIn is only 30% of your social graph. If your buyer, the people that you're trying to influence, I remember going and seeing a friend of mine, and I wrote an article about how you could get 10 C-level meetings a week using Twitter. I wrote this, I think it was about 10 years ago. It's on my LinkedIn profile. He said the people that he was trying to get hold of was a chief purchasing officer, chief people officer is what we would call them today.
Okay.
And they weren't active on LinkedIn, but they were active on Instagram. And they were taking pictures, and they were big. They had 2 dogs, and they walked their dogs, and they were basically sharing pictures of their dogs on Instagram. Now, what you have to, the skill that you need to do as a salesperson, all of the skills that we've always had is the same, but you need to be able to you need to understand how to be social. It's not about how to use LinkedIn. It's about how to be social, and how do you pick that up and take that to Instagram. And one of the things that we do is in our social selling methodology is that we do a lot of it on LinkedIn, but we also teach people for 30 minutes how to use Twitter, or what is now called X. Because what we're showing them is that this is about being social, and we're going to go from LinkedIn to a different social platform, and you're going to take all those things that and you're going to apply it. And they go, actually, this is really simple. And you go, yes. This isn't about having to go to each platform and learn how to use them. It's about learning how to be social.
Well, I do like and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Of course, you've got courses and in the book and courses and methodologies to teach people this, but we'll give them a few tips and tricks today. Okay. Knowing that it all starts with a strategy. But one of the things, again, that kind of struck me, and I'll call myself the slow learner on this one, Tim, is we did spend a number of years posting.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you, we certainly weren't getting 10 CEO meetings a week from posting. It was a fabulous credibility shield. When we're having a conversation with someone and they said, well, let's go get to know, in the funnel, it ended up being a very good credibility shield in the same way that a website was a very good credibility shield 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it wasn't wasted. We did get some inbound leads, but we didn't have that. One of the things we didn't have, the point we didn't sort of grasp was being social. And you make a couple of references to what if I drove Mark and in the funnel, we jumped in the car and we went to a place that had all of the best buyers for in the funnel. Okay. What would you do if you walked into that cocktail party? And so would you walk up dancing and pitching your product, or would you walk up and start having interesting conversations with people about them and their business and what's going on in their life and topics? Would you have those interesting conversations? And of course, that's what we do. We do the latter. So we weren't really what we tried to do in the early days, Tim, is we tried to outsource the listening part of social media. Or we had very junior people in our company doing the listening part of social media. But and God bless them, they were wonderful. But they didn't understand how to respond when somebody said, "Hey, Mark, we're having this kind of issue right now where we get first meetings with buyers, but we never get a second meeting with buyers. And the buyers are very unengaged in that first discussion. They don't know what to do next." So I think where it started to change for us a little bit was when I took more ownership, Tim, say, listen, we're going to have those conversations. And that is something that jumped out in the first half of the book to me big time. Listening.
Yes. The mistake that people make is that they think it's about what we're going to do is we're going to do what we've always done, and we're going to do that on social media. Yeah. So we're going to take brochures and we're going to push them out, and we're going to get the employees to push them out, and won't that be great? And of course, what happens is nothing, because people don't come to social media to read brochures. That's what your website is for, and I bet they don't read them on there either. And so what people don't have is a strategy in terms of, I'm told, I've read an article or whatever that I need to post on social media. So they post and then they go and do something else. So you got 20 likes on that. What did you do with them? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, you got 20 likes on it. What did you do? I don't understand what you're talking about. I said, well, all those likes is basically a person digitally saying, I digitally resonate with your post. Okay, yeah. So what? Well, did you go and talk to them? No. Well, why not? You're getting this is free business. Why are you not? Why? And the thing is that what we've done, we've been running a piece of research now for the last 10 months, where we've basically been working out all the posts. So we know exactly what post works on social media, when to do it and why to do it. And when I mean works, I don't mean it gets views or clicks or whatever. I mean it generates revenue for the business.
And Tim, just to clarify, is that this and the timing and the post, it's for your business, or it for all businesses?
Okay, for our business.
For your business.
What we're doing we're actually doing it for two people. One of them is at us.
Okay.
And so we know the type of posts that work, and we know the type of posts that don't work. Now, we have a client that got a $500 million with a B deal off the back of posting something on LinkedIn.
Wow.
So it is possible to get business by posting stuff, but if you do it once, that's luck. What you want is a methodology to say, I post something every week, and every week I get $1 billion deal. And so what we've been able to do is what we do is we teach people to say, right, everything that you do on social media, there has to be a reason. There needs to be a methodology, a process. So when you're going to post something, why you're going to post it, and then how you're going to harvest the response that you get from it. So, for example, human posts work far better than corporate posts, because most people just see a brochure as corporate propaganda and won't read it. Now, for example, if you posted a brochure, you will get little, if no response at all. If you post a picture of yourself holding a brochure, that's something different, because it's a human post. Now, then again, it's about what you may say, I've been working for the Selling Well podcast now for 6 months, and I really love Mark. He's really inspirational. He's empowered me to do these things. And everyone goes, brilliant, Tim. I think that's really, really good. Now, We don't see that as selling, but what you've done is that you've put the Selling Well podcast in front of me. And of course, what I'm able to do with my content is put that in front of people every single day. Now, if you cold call people, how often a day can you cold call somebody?
I think, well, it depends on your business and your industry, but I think you'd have folks out there. Let's get away from the nutty auto dialers and generic one who knows stuff. 10
You
live
can't.
conversations,
You couldn't
15 live
cold call
conversations.
somebody every day. You probably couldn't cold call somebody every week.
Oh, not the same person. No.
You might not even be able to cold call them every month, but every day I put a piece of contact and go, hello, this is me. Here's a business issue.
Yeah.
Hello, here's another business issue. Hello, here's today's business issue that you may have. And I can do that every single day.
Yeah. So that's the posting.
And of course, Tim, what I'm doing when I do that is I build, like, people get to know me, like me, and trust me. If I cold called you every single day, you wouldn't know me, like me, and trust me. You'd come around to my house and probably shoot me.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not in this day and age. But let's go back to your
metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, you're posting every day, and you get those numbers of likes. What do you do when you get the like? So, and I'll give you a real world example as well. We did a post, I'm going to call it, just at the beginning of Q4. And we talked about the importance during the Q4 sprint to recharge your batteries, to take a pause, to make sure you stay balanced. And then somebody, we got a few likes and a few thoughts there. And somebody came back and went, what do you do to stay balanced? So, because I said, hey, share what you do to keep a bit of balance, and different people were weighing in. And somebody went, hey, Mark, what do you do to stay balanced? And I put a post up of a short video of a bar band that I play in.
Fantastic.
Where we were playing a gig and boom, boom, boom. And to your point, we've never had engagement like we had on that video. That video went, for us, it went as probably one of the top posts we've ever had.
So if I'm going to answer the question about content, but if I can take a step back, you asked me to basically come up with things that your audience can implement straight away. So let me go on that, and I will talk about content. So there's 3 things that you need to know and you need to understand. The first thing is that you need to have a buyer-centric profile. What that means is that your profile on LinkedIn is a shop window to the world. LinkedIn is just about to go past 1 billion people that are there. They walk past your profile every day. If your profile is the same as everybody else's, I'm a salesperson and I've been in President's Club they're just going to walk straight past. Mm-hmm. What all buyers are looking for is an expert, someone that can help them. Now, it's not about you or about me. This is about them. So what we're looking for is, when I talk about buyer-centric profile, is a profile that's going to show that you understand the business issues. And it doesn't matter what age you are on this, whether you're my age, which is 1,000, or whether you're 23 or 25, you can show that you are an expert. Mm-hmm. And people will stop. And what we know is that most people now under the age of 34 use social media to search than they do search
Google.
Engine. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So there's a data produced by a guy called Simon Kemp, who's on LinkedIn. He's a great person to follow. He produces this data every quarter. It's free of charge. And it shows that most people under the age of 34 use social rather than, and what we often do when we use search is we know the question to ask. When we use social media, generally we don't know the question to ask. Mm-hmm. The problem with search, it doesn't give us the right answer, because if I go onto Google and say, what's the best CRM system in the world? You'll get every single CRM vendor basically buying that search, and it's just a mess. So we come to social media because we know it gives us a far better response. Mm-hmm. So
more authentic response, Tim?
So it's a more, and it's about your network. Just like the question said, so what do you do, Mark? Mm-hmm. And that conversation, right? The second thing that you need is you need to have a wide and varied network. If you're not connected to the people that you're trying to influence or the people that you're trying to sell to, you are invisible. And I would guarantee that if your listeners go out to their sales teams and say, how many people that we're trying to sell to are we connected to? I bet they'll say, well, 1 or 2. And that's not, if so BMW is a client of ours. They've got 100,000 people who work for BMW. So how many people should I be connected to? One? Well, no. 10?
Right.
No. 100? I don't know, but it's more than one. So
Right.
whenever your leadership are basically running QBRs, quarterly business reviews, account reviews, one of the questions that they need to ask is, how many people are you connected to in the account? I actually have a section in the book, you've read it, about how to run QBRs in this current digital world. And that's, so you need to be connected. Now, LinkedIn allows you to connect to about 200 people a week. Your sales team should be maxing that out. When I mean connect, I don't mean, hey, Mark, I come from the Selling Well podcast and I look and, here's all my wares. All that is spam. What they need to do is that this is your ability to have a conversation. It's just, as you said, if I could drive you to a room where all of your prospects are, and they're all standing there holding a drink, what would you do? You wouldn't go up to them and say, hey, I've got a great podcast for you. You go, hey, Mark, so where are you? Where have you been? Have you traveled far? God, the weather's terrible at the moment, isn't it? And you'd have a conversation. And that is one of the things that we end up teaching salespeople outside of our social selling methodology, is about how to have conversations and how to run those first meetings on social. So the next thing is, social selling isn't about you have to do the whole transaction on social media. The whole point of using social media is that you basically get a meeting just like this. So I'm on this podcast through my use of social media. Mark's allowed me to comment on here because of what I've done. So you need this wide and varied network. The third thing that you need is content. Now, this isn't about brochures, white papers and stuff. This is about how you as an individual, because this is your LinkedIn profile. In the world of sales, people buy people. Even in the world of AI, people buy people. I want to know that if I buy something from Mark Cox, he's going to look after me. He's the expert that I think he is. So what we're looking for is content like Mark in his band, because that shows that Mark's a real person. Wow, I'd love to be in a band. I never played an instrument. As you can see, all I can do is play the gramophone. But I'd love to do that. My business partner is a guitar player. Behind him, he has loads of guitars. Funnily enough, all of the deals that he closes are with people who play the guitar.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Because what we're doing is that we're creating those connections. Now, so I'll give you an example of a piece of content that one of my team put out. He put this piece of content out, said, my family loves Led Zeppelin. And every Friday night, my wife puts on Led Zeppelin. And when I can hear it through the door of my office, I know it's time to start the weekend. So I finish whatever I'm doing, and we go out and I spend the weekend with my family. What's your favorite Led Zeppelin song?
Oh, fantastic.
And so everyone, people went, Stairway to Heaven, mine's Kashmir, a lot of people.
Lot of love.
A whole lot of love. A lot of people, when I tell this story, they say, when the levee breaks, come on. And so these are so on Monday, he basically went to all of the people that had responded that he wasn't connected to and said, oh yeah, when the levee breaks, it's a great favorite of mine. Can we connect? 100% connection rate.
Wow.
No connection, and this is my product, and this is stuff. This is about having a conversation. And all the people that he knew, he basically said, we obviously have an interest in Led Zeppelin. Why don't we get on a call? And they all said yes. Why wouldn't you? It's a Led Zeppelin fan. We're going to talk about Led Zeppelin. And then what we do is we teach people how to run those sort of meetings. So, when one of my SDRs, he gets 10 meetings. He looks for an organization where they insist he makes cold calls and emails. He gets nothing from it. So one morning, he'll basically get 10 meetings, which is enough for him not to be fired. And then he takes the dogs for a walk in the afternoon. Now, I said to him, why didn't you get another 10 meetings? He said, if I got 20 meetings in a day, they would think there was something wrong with me. So I only get 10 because that's all I need to do. I just tick the boxes and pass the KPIs, which is ridiculous.
Great example. Well, let's go back to the three and team. So the three things in terms of that Tim spoke about: buyer-centric profile, thinking about your digital territory, and then content. Buyer-centric profile, digital territory, and content. Let's go a little further on the buyer-centric profile, because if memory serves, your profile, when I took a quick look at this before I jumped on, said something about should have played Kidditch for England or something
Yep.
of that nature. Didn't
Yep.
talk about being a social selling expert.
No.
What is Kidditch? Here's a silly, and my parents are British. I should probably know the answer to this question.
Quidditch is a made up game that doesn't exist, from the J.K. Rowling books about Harry Potter.
Got
Yeah.
it. Never
So
had.
it's a game that you play on a broomstick.
Got it. Okay, got it.
So if you Google your name, unless you have your own website, the first thing that will probably come up is your LinkedIn profile. And your LinkedIn profile will show your photo, your name, and your summary title. Therefore, your summary title is the most visible thing about you on the internet. What you want is someone to go, should have played Quidditch for England. What on earth is that? Click through, comes through to my LinkedIn profile. Because I have, for the professional edition of LinkedIn.
So you know who did it.
Sorry?
So you know who did it. So, yeah.
I know everybody who's looked at my LinkedIn profile. So anybody who Googles me, I know who they are. Now, what you'll find, what most LinkedIn trainers will do is that they tell you to put what you do on that. It's basically you're self-harming yourself. The number of people that basically connect to me and say, I help CEOs with their accounting. I already have an accountant. Ignore. I help CEOs with their physical fitness. I run 3 times a week. Ignore. I don't know who tells that this advice is fundamentally flawed and is killing businesses. You know, your summary title has to work for you. It has to create curiosity. It has to create someone goes, that person sounds really interesting. Wonder what that means. I'd like to talk to that person. So we have clients, we have clients where people are walking across social media and saying, you look really interesting. We've got this problem. I think you can help me. And that's turning into multi-million-dollar deals.
So Tim, let's go back if we can, though, because you bring up that point about the playing Kidditch for England. Thank you for that. We've just permanently lost any of the Harry Potter fans who just realize I'm not a Harry Potter fan. So they're never going to be listening to our podcast again. They've just clicked off.
Well, maybe you get some magic. And
well, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll get into it now. But we also talked about those buyers under 34 that are using social for searching.
Yeah.
If something like your profile does it, has something quirky like that, then how do they find you if they're looking for an expert on social selling?
Because I have social selling elsewhere in my profile.
Okay.
So the way that Google and the way that LinkedIn looks at your profile, basically it's a string of text. And I have social selling in my profile. So it's in your job. It's elsewhere within your profile. That's not your summary title. Is not what's reliant on search within.
Thank you. Okay. Yep. Got it. So we've talked a little bit about, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but we talked a little bit about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Before we end the podcast, team, we're absolutely going to have all the links and talk about how you get in contact with Tim. But give us a couple of data points as well on Twitter or Instagram, because one of the things that I found very interesting in the book, Tim, on Twitter was you think Twitter's actually better for making first contact with some of your buyers than something like LinkedIn, if I got that correctly. And maybe you can explain why.
Really, I think that certainly if you're selling in IT, which is what I've done, you'll find that people are on Twitter or X as it is now. And you've got a far more ability to actually have a conversation with them. And ultimately what we're trying to do is have a conversation, because the conversation creates a sale. So we talked about, which lead to conversation and commercial interaction. And you're able to comment, and what you need to be doing is be part of the conversation, which is retweeting, responding to the comment. Hey Tim, I really love the interview that you did with Mark Cox. I really learned a lot. I think I can learn from you. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't find that, if you say, Tim, that's really great, and I've got this great platform, the first thing I'll do is block you. But if you say, Tim, that's really interesting, I don't find that as scary. As Andy Paul says in his book, if you pitch to somebody, it basically creates a fight or flight reaction in somebody.
Yeah.
And so what you don't want to do is do that.
Well, actually, that's exactly how I got you on this podcast. I heard you on Andy.
Yeah.
I heard you on Andy Paul's podcast, and then reached out to you and said, "Hey, we've got a podcast, and here's some other people who've been on it, including Andy. But I loved you on his pod." First, I said I loved you on his podcast.
You did. You were very nice.
Oh, thank you. By the way, for good reason. This will be a great podcast for us as well. And folks, again, the book "Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers." I really like the discussion as well, Tim, on changemakers. So all of this trying to get to buyers, but changemakers. Tell us a little bit about the changemaker term and who that individual is within the organization.
So all of the sales methodologies, Medic, whatever, all have a term, whether it's a coach or a economic buyer or whatever. Champion, or well, we actually see that there's this particular person called a change maker, and this comes from research that Google did actually back in 2015, which is where they saw this different person. The person tended to be younger, probably less than 40, could be now in their 40s, probably looking for their next promotion. They're not bothered about your solution. Now, with all the most of the sponsors or the coach or people like that, they usually want your solution to come into the organization. When I was at Oracle, I used to sell to a lot of people who wanted Oracle on their CV. And therefore they gave you information to make sure that you were the chosen solution. Whereas this change maker, they don't care. What they want is to get the promotion, and what they want to do is, so if you go to a meeting and they tear you apart, it's highly likely that person is a change maker, because what they're trying to do is that they're testing you, your solution, and your credibility, whether you're trustworthy, whether you lie, that sort of stuff, and they're testing you, and they actually then take your solution into the business. So I know, for example, the Azure people in Microsoft basically use this technique. They find change makers within the organization. They then say, here's a piece of content that you may find interesting, knowing full well that change maker will then take it into the organization and spread it. So you don't need, if you find the change maker, you don't need to necessarily, the finance director may not be active on LinkedIn, but the change maker does the work for you.
Great. And lots of, by the way, that's early in the book and great definitions there, Tim.
Thank you.
Let me add a left of center question. What are you reading right now professionally?
I am a horrendous reader of books. I've read, or will have read, 40 books this year.
Wow.
And the current book I'm reading is a book called The Mum Test. And it's a book about, if you are starting up a company, or you have a business idea, the worst person you can ask about whether it would fly is your mum. Because of course she'll tell you, oh yeah, it's a great idea, Tim. And it actually goes through about how you should ask questions of customers, prospects, right from you haven't even built a product, because and why, and the type of questions that you should ask, and it's really, really good.
Isn't that fun? By the way, what a great premise for the book.
Yeah. He's been a startup person and himself, and he made all the mistakes and said, this cost me $500,000, and and it is really great at coming up with the scenarios of the questions to ask, rather than just saying, would you like a fitness app? Because you'd go, because of course you'd say yes, because you'd say, but even though you didn't want one,
right?
Because you'd say, well, of course, because I'm a podcaster, so therefore I'm interested in fitness. Of course I am, because I'm, So the fact that I asked the question and you lied to me, immediately I've lost.
Right. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to just say it again: social selling techniques to influence buyers and changemakers. Tim, I learned a ton reading the book, team. Okay, you will too.
Thank you, Mark. It really means a lot,
Well, you're very welcome, Tim. And we have lots of folks on this podcast, and many of them are driven because I read the book and want to talk to the person who wrote it, not the opposite, where we get a guest. So when I heard you on Andy's podcast, one of the things, and Andy's been on our podcast a few times, I've been on his a few times. The thing that jumped out is, how did I miss this? Because like you, I'm a voracious reader. So it was kicking myself a little bit. And once I got into it, I really started enjoying it, because it is the strategic approach. And then, team, it does get into some tactical coaching on what to do once you understand the strategy behind it. Tim, people are going to want to learn more about you and the business. How do they do that most efficiently?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm Timothy or Tim Hughes, and my summary title is Should Have Played Quidditch for England. Or they can find me on Twitter or X. I'm Timothy_Hughes, or our website is dlaignite.com.
dlaignite.com. All those links, team, will be in the show notes for today. Tim, thanks again for joining us.
You're welcome, Mark.
Really great to meet you. And folks, thank you so much for joining. As you know, we run the Selling Well podcast to try and elevate the performance and professionalism of B2B sales. But really, we're trying to improve the lives of salespeople. The more mastery you have, as Tim mentions in his book, quotes back to Daniel Pink, one of our other guests, the more mastery you have in something, the more you're going to enjoy it. So we run this podcast for you. And if there's ways that we can improve this podcast, I'd like to know. And my email is markcox@inthefunnel.com. And we love constructive criticism. And we respond to everybody who gives us an idea. So if there's something you like, let me know. That's great. But if there's something that we could do to improve this, we really want to know that. And thank you for doing so. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast and tell your friends. We want to improve their lives too. We'll see you next time on the Selling Well.